One of the big questions that hangs over the UFO community is the so-called Fermi paradox. If there's so much potential for intelligent life in the universe, why haven't we heard from anybody? Well, one explanation is that the alien visitors are like zoologists trying to study rare species in the wild. They go to great lengths to go unnoticed so they can observe without disturbing their subject. But now that we've developed high-tech reconnaissance cameras, it may be harder for them to stay hidden. Which brings us to our next video.
It's November 2014, and a Chilean Navy helicopter is on routine patrol near the capital, Santiago. The crew is testing out a forward-looking infrared or FLIR camera. Something catches the technician's eye. And when he points his camera, this is what he captures. Two large overlapping orbs. Check it out. They're moving in unison. Maybe they're even connected.
So we see here, this is done in infrared. Everything that's white is cooler, and everything that is in black is much warmer or hotter, giving off a lot of heat.
Based on the thermal camera's readout, the object is hotter than everything else in the frame, and the Navy crew says the object's speed matches their own 130 knots. Then look, the objects seem to release a plume of some sort, not once, but twice. For forensic investigator Chase Klotsky, the plumes are an intriguing sight.
I've just never seen anything like this before. And the plume, like, what is that? It's so unusual. Is it gas? Is it vapor?
One thing Klotsky is certain about, the video is not a hoax.
This case is absolutely the real deal. Chile actually openly investigates their UFOs. So when the Chilean government comes out and says, this is something that has the characteristics of a UAP, you can take it to the bank.
The Chilean government studied this video for 2 years before releasing it to the public. And this UAP, or unidentified aerial phenomenon, didn't just look strange.
We have reports from the Chilean Navy that this aircraft did not appear on its radar system. We also have a report that they did try to communicate with this aircraft, but it never responded back, which is a bit of a mystery.
The Chilean camera could switch between optical and infrared settings. For an unexplained reason, the plume that shows up as hot in the infrared doesn't appear at all in the optical viewer. To cut through all of these mysteries, we turn the footage over to our experts.
Tim McMillan considers whether it might have been a hostile craft trying to sneak into Chilean airspace.
Obviously, the drone theory is one that everyone has to examine. This was filmed in 2014. Drone technologies were not nearly as advanced as they are today, and they weren't as frequent, even with the militaries of the world. And so there's not really any shape that would be consistent with what you would expect to see from a drone.
Balloons are also mistaken for UFOs quite often, so astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio looks at that possibility.
Certainly balloons do go that high, and certainly balloons do travel slowly, but they generally don't show hot spots like this. I do not believe this is a balloon.
The key could be those strange plumes. D'Antonio thinks the object is moving through pockets of moist air.
I have watched contrails start and stop and make dashes in the sky. I think this is a contrail from a commercial jet. 2 hot spots, 2 trails.
Others think the plumes could be a plane dumping fuel. But wouldn't the 2-year investigation have tracked that plane down? And the object appears to be headed towards Santiago, a city of over 4 million people.
Aircraft, when they're in trouble, will tend to go out to the ocean to be able to dump their fuel. And they do that in non-populated areas. And if you look at the settings on the Westcam camera, it was looking at an object that was fairly straight ahead, which means that the object was equivalent to its altitude, which puts it at a relatively low. 4,000 feet is nothing in terms of its altitude.
Airplanes only form contrails of ice above 30,000 feet. Hoffman sees why the Chilean authorities still view this video as unexplained.
The Chilean video has an object that has all the appearances of being something that we would think of as being an aircraft, but we just don't know for sure.
There are still no clear explanations for why radar failed to detect this object, or why the plume doesn't show up in the optical viewer. But it's worth pointing out that the U.S. Navy only started seeing UAPs like the famous Tic Tac when it installed its Aegis radar systems, which the Chileans didn't have. So, no one can identify what the Chilean Navy caught on video. So we're going to call this a real UFO.
On a Friday evening in 2008, geology professor Heinrich Frank is homebound on the freeway past the town of Novo Hamburgo, Brazil. Something catches his eye at a construction site on the side of the road. Take a look.
The first tunnel I found was very, very small. And when I entered, I see immediately the claw marks on the walls.
Look closer. Dr. Frank focuses on this, grooves dug into the tunnel walls, then slashes in the surface. What could have made these marks? Dr. Frank's research dates the caves to be about 12,000 years old. And there's reason to think they aren't just natural formations.
Taking a close look at them from a scientific point of view, they don't appear to be natural caves. Based on the types of rocks that they're being cut in, some of these rocks are much harder than the easy rocks that would be broke by water. They also have a really weird shape in that they're more horizontal than they are vertical, which tells me that something carved these tunnels out.
And when you consider all the megafauna, you have only 2 animals with the necessary claws to build tunnels, the armadillos and the sloths.
We're talking now about the Pleistocene era, which ended 11,700 years ago. It was the age of megafauna, gargantuan mammals like mastodons, and in this case, perhaps the famous giant sloth. Could Frank have discovered some sort of ancient burrow? Or could such an animal, believed to be extinct, still be living there today?
When you go inside these tunnels, sometimes you feel like the animal is on the next corner.
The fossil record shows that Megalonyx sloths were the size of present-day bull elephants, but throw in 3 massive claws on each forearm used for defense. They roamed the Western Hemisphere when humans first arrived.
One can only imagine how terrifying it must have been to try to hunt these giant ground sloths. In fact, there has been evidence found of these giant ground sloths, the mylodonts, that were actually trapped in a cave in Argentina and corralled and kept as a food source by primitive humans.
Giant sloths and humans together? If it sounds like something out of a horror film instead of history, a recent find will change your mind. At White Sands in New Mexico, archaeologists uncovered the prints of a giant sloth being followed by humans. They were stalking it. So could these giants still be around? Did they dig the Brazilian tunnels? And if not them, then what did?
If you take a look at one of the tops of the ceilings of one of these caverns, you'll see that there looks like claw marks.
So geologist Bob Anderson thinks some sort of burrowing creature made these caves. And what if these animals still exist? Archaeologist Ed Barnhart says not so fast.
Well, some people have suggested that these giant caves are actually the holes and burrows. Well, that's an interesting idea, but show me the artifacts.
So far, there's no proof. No one has captured a giant sloth, found a carcass, or taken a single picture of one.
So I can take giant sloth right off the list.
And Barnhart even questions if giant sloths ever dug these tunnels at all.
Look down in this section here. Look, there's one, there's one coming across here. There is no reason to believe that these are claw marks because they would be repeatedly sections of 3.
Barnhart makes a good point, but if a giant 3-toed sloth had uneven claws, it might leave 1, 2, or 3 marks depending on how hard it was digging. Still, Barnhart thinks it's more likely the marks were created by an extinct worm-like creature called a trilobite. Some were predators. The biggest weighed as much as 10 pounds, and they were known to burrow into walls.
These are much more like worm casts that were into the wall. Trilobites make more sense to me because those are individual hot dog-shaped things that attach themselves to the wall and dig in.
But hang on. As you can see, there are distinct differences between these confirmed trilobite tracks and what we see in Dr. Frank's tunnels. Is this case really closed?
Okay, it's true that no giant sloth fossils have been found in Dr. Frank's tunnels, but the marks don't look exactly like trilobite tracks either. So we can't come down on one side or the other. We're calling this an unexplained phenomenon until we get further proof.
Buenos Aires, Argentina, April 2020. Local media report strange sightings of bats that can swim and run on land. One provocative online headline reads, "Mysterious humanoid bats reported in Argentina and in China." And here is their proof. These humanoid-looking bat-like creatures appear to be swimming in a local lake. Take a closer look. What in the world can they be? 6,000 miles away, another freakish video of more mystery bats, this time from China. Watch as this one flops on the ground, making unsettling vocalizations.
It's flopping around, it's screeching, it's acting erratically. It's actually kind of disturbing. So it's fairly obvious why someone would immediately look at this and think this is some kind of really strange, weird-looking mutant bat.
Ambitious scientists have tried to create custom hybrid species before. Perhaps most famously, the Soviet zoologist Ilya Ivanov tried to cross an ape and a human back in the 1920s, without success. Are these swimming bats the result of some recent genetic project?
Even normal bats have a complex relationship with humans. Research suggests some viruses like measles and mumps originated in bats. But are the animals in these videos really some kind of mutant? We turn to our analysts.
I can see how this would look particularly mysterious.
Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger says the theories about these creatures run the gamut.
There's some conjecture online that this animal might be the mix between a bat and something like a frog.
But she doesn't believe that kind of crossbreeding is possible.
To be able to mix two species that are so different would be highly unlikely and wouldn't result in something that would actually be alive.
So if this is not a mutant, what is it? Wildlife biologist Lucy Eckersley first focuses on the video out of China.
I don't think that this is even a bat. I think it's another type of mammal, something that's called a colugo. Colugos are a type of gliding mammal that are sometimes also called gliding lemurs. They can reach up to 200 feet using this amazing area that's called the patagium, that fold of skin that reaches from their forelimbs down to their hind limbs.
That might explain the Chinese video. But what about these strange things in the water in Buenos Aires?
I don't think that these are colugos. I think what we're actually seeing is a marine animal called a sea hare that we can see around the world and can grow up to 15 inches long. Both of these animals, I understand why people might think that these are mutant varieties of bats living underwater or looking like this strange animal screeching on the ground. But what I can tell by looking at their anatomy, that what we have is a colugo and sea hares.
Again, it's important to know that many species can share common characteristics and affinities. But people, frogs, and bats have different DNA and can't be crossbred, at least not yet. Our verdict? Colugos and sea hares.
It's March 2016, and the streets of Bogota, Colombia are swarming with traffic. So it's no surprise that a group of bystanders on a bridge started screaming when they saw this. Journalist Chrissy Elliott had the same reaction.
Oh my God. I was like, what is this guy doing? He dodges between vehicles, he lies underneath them, and then he just prances off.
Look again. The daredevil pedestrian seems to possess cat-like reflexes. Might there be a strain of superhumans with this kind of quickness?
It takes about 1/4 of a second for a human reflex to react, 250 milliseconds. But there are people whose reaction time is even faster than that.
People like speed shooter Bob Munden, who holds 18 world records. He's been clocked hitting a target and replacing the gun in his holster within 175 milliseconds.
And this guy, if this is real, his reaction time must be on the next level.
Perhaps something else is going on here. Dodging traffic doesn't just take skill, it takes will.
There are about 400 known cases of something called Urbach-Wyeth disease. And what it does is it withers away at your amygdala, which is the part of your brain that is responsible for fear. So could this guy who's cartwheeling through traffic have this disease?
So we have two things to explain here: the traffic dodger's lightning-quick reflexes and his foolhardy fearlessness. Our investigation begins not with the person, but with the footage itself, as we turn to forensic video analyst Mick West.
What was strange to me was not simply how daring this was, but the fact that all the cars ignored him. They weren't actually slowing down or trying to stop or avoid him.
West's first impression tells him this traffic dodger may not be what he seems. But what clues are in the video?
What I often look at in analyzing videos is the lighting and the shadows. We can see the whole setup. There's this pole here, and then there's this power pole, and this is what's casting the shadows in the road. So we know that that's an actual shadow, and that's the shadow of the power pole. So that should be obscured by the cars when they go by the buses.
But watch closely as the bus approaches. Two shadows appear to exist in the same place.
Now, shadows don't add together like that. If something is a shadow and then something else shadows it, it eliminates the first shadow, because light doesn't go through things twice. Which means that this isn't a real shadow. This is something that's been added. It's kind of been overlaid on top.
That's not all West finds. Take a look as this guy lays down in the street.
This car really doesn't look like it's big enough to go over him. And I actually looked up the model of the car. It's a Renault Twingo, small car, and the ground clearance is just under 7 inches. So it's about that much, which is impossible for someone to fit their head in something that's 150 millimeters.
So it turns out seeing isn't believing. Well, then how'd he do it? West says the camera was locked down at one position on the bridge.
There'd be no traffic. So he would just wait until there was a gap in the traffic. He would run out, do his stuff, and then get to the other side.
Then by combining the solo acrobatics with another shot of oncoming traffic and some staged screaming, you have one seemingly incredible superhuman.
All these add up to it being a forgery.
We contacted the creator of this video, and he told us there's no problem with his brain's amygdala. He fears danger just like the rest of us, but he did confirm one thing. This video is two different versions combined with digital effects and an extraordinary imagination.